Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today. Hope you're all doing absolutely excellent, and I think it's time to have a little talk about Ubisoft. This has been a very fascinating company to watch navigate a declining business over the last couple of years. We've seen all the headlines, declining stock, rumors of a buyout with Tencent. Tencent definitely smelt the blood in the water and cozied up, immediately saying, oh, you need a little money, we got you. And that resulted in the birth of Vantage Studios, which is going to be the starting point of this conversation. But alongside that, Ubisoft has been navigating public outrage for a long while now, but I feel like it really reached its fever pitch with the releases of Star Wars Outlaws and Assassin's Creed Shadows. Star Wars Outlaws should have been, by all accounts, a slam dunk. It was the Star Wars license, which should have been afforded a massive budget, and it is Ubisoft working with their bread and butter. They're making an open world game, and frankly, if they just did a classic Ubisoft open world with a Star Wars skin, I probably would have been really happy with that. As I said in my review, I was very disappointed by that game, and so much so that I just couldn't accept that, and we went back to the game earlier this year to check out all of the changes they made, because in fairness, in the patch notes you could read, they responded to almost every core concern I had with the game at launch. So I thought, maybe they've turned it around now, and unfortunately, that was not the case. The game still feels really old. The release of Star Wars Outlaws gave birth to an entire conversation around Ubisoft's lack of quality control. And with that, Assassin's Creed Shadows, you may have forgotten, was supposed to come out later that year. And as the conversations progressed more and more, people were very worried that Assassin's Creed Shadows would also ship in a broken state, so Ubisoft caved and gave the game more time into February of this year. Unfortunately for Ubisoft, this would give a lot of room for marketing to screw up more and more and more, and that would lead to a lot more public outrage beyond even the quality of the game. It was now just about how many things they messed up in the messaging of this game. Despite that, Assassin's Creed Shadows has managed to sell pretty well, but you can't help but wonder, looking at its sales, what it could have been if it was a relatively clean launch. And as we'll talk about in this video, the launch of Assassin's Creed Shadows has had an impact on the future titles of Assassin's Creed. The long story short is that this franchise is undergoing massive changes, and that's saying a lot. We're not too far removed from when we saw massive changes in the terms of the game's design. By Assassin's Creed Syndicate, a lot of people were a little bit tired of the formula, myself included, and they were ready for a shakeup. And so here comes the RPG-ified Assassin's Creed games, beginning with Assassin's Creed Origins up until the recently released Assassin's Creed Shadows. I think it was a good response to overall what was series fatigue for a lot of people with annualized releases, which Ubisoft also got away from. So if I'm saying it's a massive shakeup beyond that, yes, pretty big here. And I think we're only just seeing the surface of it, and that this problem will only unravel itself before our very eyes as time goes on. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into what's going on with Ubisoft, we don't talk about them all the time, but when things like this are popping up where it's a very interesting story, or of course if they have like a great game, man, shout out to Mario and Rabbids, love that one, then we're talking about it, so consider subscribing. Now all this begins with, again, Tencent. So they invest a lot of money into Ubisoft, and they spin off this new team called Vantage Studios, which is a new Ubisoft subsidiary, which they kind of try to put a lot of positive energy behind, saying, hey, this is a place to be creatively free. And so a lot of Ubisoft fans were biting onto this, going like, yes, free from the tendrils of Ubisoft and their creatively, morally bankrupt leadership. Excellent, except the head of Vantage Studios is Yves Guillemot's son, and Yves Guillemot is the head of Ubisoft. His son, Charlie, is not someone who I think you could say is creatively inspired if his portfolio is anything to go by, because you're seeing on screen what he was responsible for, and that was building the future of AI and Web3 entertainment through a NFT, blockchain, anime thing here. I was like, what? Okay, so this is clearly a guy who's just here to make a lot of money, and I don't think there's anything wrong with making money in the video game business, but you got to also understand the art form of it, and when I look at stuff like this, I go, I don't know how much you get the art part of it if this is the type of business you're investing in, but I'll try to hold back my judgment until Vantage Studios ships something, but it looks like this type of leadership is already starting to shake out long-term Assassin's Creed vets. Now, it's already a messy picture with that involved. Then you throw in Assassin's Creed, which many people are, again, tired of, and some people may look at these exits and go, okay, good. I'll share some thoughts, but first, the headline. This comes from GamesIndustry.biz, and they write, Assassin's Creed franchise lead Marc-Alexis Cote exits Ubisoft after 20 years. Cote joined Ubisoft in 2005 as a software engineer, working as a tools and engine programmer and level designer before securing his first position as director in 2010. Since then, he has worked almost exclusively on Assassin's Creed titles, serving as creative director, senior producer, executive producer, and vice president executive producer, respectively. According to IGN, Cote declined a position at Vantage. Staff were informed of his departure via an email sent out this afternoon informing staff that Vantage's leadership team needed to be aligned with its goals. Vantage Studios co-CEO Christophe Derines reportedly told staff he was disappointed by Cote's decision. Following the organizational restructuring announced in March 2025, Marc-Alexis Cote has chosen to pursue a new path elsewhere outside of Ubisoft, Ubisoft told GamesIndustry.biz in a statement. While we are saddened to see him go, we're confident that our talented teams will carry forward the strong foundation he helped build. We are deeply grateful for the impact Marc-Alexis has had over the years, particularly in shaping the Assassin's Creed brand into what it is today. His leadership, creativity, and dedication have left a lasting mark on our teams and our players. We thank him sincerely for his many contributions and wish him continued success in all of his future endeavors. So there's a couple of ways you can assess this one. For me, I think of the human element. That's immediately what comes to mind to me. You've spent 20 years of your life on something. There's a level of comfort that breeds within that. That's what you know. That might be what you love. That might be what's convenient for you. I can't speak for Marc-Alexis Cote. However, you look at that and there was an attachment to the franchise, right? And through all the ups and downs, right? Through the start of this thing being great, before even the first one released, right? To be there since 2005, you were there with the birth of Assassin's Creed with AC1, right? You went all the way through the series fatigue, the launch issues of Assassin's Creed 3. You went through the launch issues of Unity. You went through what is reportedly toxic leadership at Ubisoft. You go through the RPG changes. You go through a lot of it. This ends up being the final straw. You gotta wonder where they're taking Assassin's Creed when you look at something like that. It's almost impossible to not draw your own conclusions here, but that's not just baseless. Keep in mind, this is Tencent who is invested in Ubisoft. I think some creative control is going to be wrestled away as a result of that, because it's no longer Ubisoft's business in a lot of ways. It's Tencent's, and they're going to make different calls and have different opinions on where the business should go. There might be a lack of creative control that's seeping even deeper into Ubisoft, because we saw the stocks going to a record low. They needed money to keep the doors open. So the sharks smell the blood in the water. Here they come. Tencent's obviously going to wrap their arm right around Ubisoft. Hey, buddy, you need a little money? We got you. We got tons of money. We can figure something out. Vantage Studios. And keep in mind, I don't say any of this with real sympathy for Ubisoft, because they kind of did it to themselves. And this was a slow, elongated process that could have been course corrected so many times over the last decade before it ever got to this point. There was a time so many people loved Ubisoft that when Vivendi was trying to take them over, we were cheering for Ubisoft. So that's how far we've gotten away from where Ubisoft once was. As a result of the releases of both Star Wars Outlaws as well as Assassin's Creed Shadows, it caused a lot of public outrage for both games for various different reasons. And as a result, Ubisoft, who has historically always been a very reactive company, is unsurprisingly reacting deeply to the outrage that they are facing. We've seen this in a lot of ways that people tease them about, which I think is fair, such as, for example, when Ubisoft sees like, oh, the Battle Royale is popular, or oh, this Fall Guys trend is popular. Here comes the Ubisoft clone of that exact genre. They're always late, and instead of innovating, they're trying to watch what others are doing and then follow suit. I think what made myself and many others a fan of Ubisoft was their ability at one point to risk take. But I always think about Far Cry 3, where that's the moment, that's the line I draw where, I mean, hey, hot take maybe. I was never a big fan of Far Cry 3. I kind of found it very like vanilla from the start, and I found Voss incredibly overrated. But I personally remember that being the moment where like, oh, that's the template. And everyone would copy it forevermore. And for a lot of people that earned them respect, for me, I just think it got really boring from that point moving forward. And when you're not risk taking, that means you're probably not trying to say anything interesting. You're creating safely. And when you're creating safely, I don't think that makes for a good product at the end of the day. But now we look ahead to what is coming to Assassin's Creed then. Well, we got this roadmap back in May earlier this year. This is from Tom Henderson of Insider Gaming, and he has the full breakdown of the Assassin's Creed lineup. Let's take a look. It says Ubisoft is making Assassin's Creed Jade, which is a game set in China. It's supposed to be the next Assassin's Creed game to release. Invictus is the working title for Assassin's Creed's Fall Guys inspired game, where players will compete in matches of 16 players. If Invictus aligns with internal expectations, there's around a 5-year plan of support and updates already penciled in. There's Obsidian, which is the Black Flag remake, which is all but confirmed at this point, given a ton of detail leaks that have happened across job listings, LinkedIn posts, that sort of stuff. There's Hex, which has a lot of interest around it, originally codenamed Neo. Hex, originally codenamed Neo, Assassin's Creed Hex, still a working name, is scheduled to release after Shadows supports ends, and Shadows is scheduled to have around 2 years of DLC support. Hex will have 1 year of DLC support. Scarlet is the next big RPG after Shadows and will release after Hex supports ends in that 1-year window. I haven't been able to pinpoint further details on what this game is, but it has been greenlit and entered production. My speculation is that it is Assassin's Creed Nebula, which is a game that will take place in 3 different settings: India, the Mediterranean, and the Aztec Empire. Stardust is Ubisoft's second remake in development and will enter production following Obsidian's release. It's unclear what the remake is. Emerald will launch shortly after Stardust within a couple of months and will be another multiplayer title with at least a 5-year plan if the game releases and meets internal expectations. This could be a PvE game previously under the codename Raid, or other multiplayer games under Echoes. It appears at the very least that one of those games has been canceled. RPG 3 currently does not have an assigned codename, developer, or theme, but is penciled in to release 2 years after Scarlet's support, which I guess is just the next RPG entry for Assassin's Creed. And Remake 3 currently doesn't have an assigned codename, developer, or game, but will be a remake that will release approximately 1 year after RPG 3's release. So yeah, you can see what's going on here, right? Lot of Assassin's Creed coming up. As I mentioned at the top of this video, you're desperate, you're going to milk your most lucrative franchise for all it's worth, especially if other parties are investing in you now and they want to see return on investment. They're going to want you to do more of this thing. This is very Ubisoft coded to see things like a Fall Guys inspired Assassin's Creed game, right? This is the trend chasing that I think has bit them in the ass so many times before. The remake conversation is interesting because I get why they're doing Black Flag, because I think Black Flag is amazing, but I also get with Skull and Bones, they're like, hey, we have all these pieces here. We may as well take them and remake this game. And I think that's just good business. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think fans will eat it up, provided that with the RPG mechanics they're adding in and the stuff that they're stripping out of the game, that it doesn't ruin the core experience. We'll see about that. But there is a litany of Assassin's Creed games that I imagine we all want to see remade. For me, one of the interesting ones that we actually just did a retrospective of earlier this year is Assassin's Creed 3. I played it through this year, just out of nowhere. And that was when I went like, man, I gotta be real. I loved Assassin's Creed up until Unity, but there's still a feeling in my gut like, did I appreciate this era enough? This annualized Assassin's Creed era enough? It was such a good time. And even when it was at its quote worst, I mean, sue me, I'm an Assassin's Creed 3 lover. I think the game is completely overhated, especially after Sequence 6 where you got everything. I'm like, this is awesome. But I get it. I get the critiques around it. But playing it, I was like, wow, like, this isn't just nostalgia. I'm like, what a good time. Like, this game had such aura and atmosphere to it. And so many of the older Assassin's Creed games did have that. But I feel like that would be on a lot of people's lists. Is like, let's remake 3, but I'm thinking more on the level of like what could be improved. For Ubisoft, again, we can tell they're in this money-making phase. Assassin's Creed 2, obviously. I mean, come on. That would be everyone up a wall. I do think that Assassin's Creed 1 is probably on that list as well, kind of like a reboot or restart. You have Mirage over there, the Middle East setting, like you have all of the tools and pieces there. You have the investment. I feel like AC1 remake makes a ton of sense. Hex, however, is going to be the interesting one because as we've learned with various leaks, Hex was like the kind of magical Assassin's Creed game. Like it's going to have powers in it and whatnot. So we'll see how that one goes, but it's an interesting road for Ubisoft moving ahead here. And kind of my expectation / prediction is if things are as bad as they seem, where you have questionable investments combined with a fear of creative control within your own buildings and you have veterans leaving, I feel like this story won't be fully told until we see it play out over like 4 years. But I still wanted to talk about it here and now because I think we are at the precipice of something very interesting with Ubisoft. So let me know your thoughts on where they're at as a company down below. I'm curious to see what you think. Otherwise, though, I will catch all of you in the next one. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.